welcome to another Mafia Romance Monday. I hope you are doing well. We've literally just come off the back of the Mafia Romance Readathon that ran between the 9th and 12th of May. That was organised by Jen from the Book Refuge and co-hosted by Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl, Jess from Honest Fiction and Jackie from First Lady Reads. So of course I was super excited about this readathon, absolutely had to take part, and what I decided to do was vlog my experience during the readathon. So the readathon has been running now for a couple of years, so if you've not experienced it before and really find it intriguing, then definitely look out for it. I'm sure it will be running again next year. But essentially what happens is that we put together a bingo board, then you read as many books as you can during the readathon and tick as many squares off your bingo board as you can with the aim of making a bingo. This year Jen switched it up a bit, made it a bit more interactive and fun, and basically she not only set out a static bingo board with prompts on, but also gave us the opportunity to earn extra points, and then for each square that we crossed off, each bingo we made, and each extra credit we earned contributed to the points that we could earn, and then dependent at the end of the readathon, depending on how many points we'd earn, basically gave us a title in the Mafia organisation. The highest obviously that you could achieve is a Dom. So because it's only a 4-day readathon, I would potentially normally only read between 2 and 3 books during that time. So I knew I'd be limited on how many books I could read, and I already had a few Mafia romances on my TBR, so of course my priority was going to be those where I could, but also I wanted to earn as many points as I could. And when I was looking at the prompts on the board, I realised that the books I'd actually selected to read for the month weren't that diverse and therefore wouldn't earn me that many points. I would really struggle to tick off any of the bonus points, earn any bingos based on the books that I'd picked. So I then had looked through some other books that I wanted to read and also the host recommendations, and ended up being very ambitious and putting 6 potential books onto my TBR. Of course, absolutely knowing that I wouldn't get to all of them, but I hope to get to 3. So the first one that I put on my list, and the one that I really wanted to read, was Vlad by Dukey and Webster. The reason is because I'm going to Rare 24 in Edinburgh later this year, and I wanted to read some books from some of the attending authors that I hadn't gotten to yet. So I'd never read anything from Dukey. She's going to be at the signing, and I saw that she and Webster had written Vlad, which is a Mafia romance. That'll be the first one that I read and the first one that I'll be vlogging. Then I wanted to pick up Diamonds in the Rough, which is the latest Emilia Finn release. It's also a Mafia romance. I really enjoyed book 1 in the series, so I wanted to get to that. I then selected 2 books that had been recommended by one of the hosts. So Jess from Honest Fiction had recommended Little Dove by Layla Frost, and also Jackie had recommended The Bratva's Baby by Jane Henry. So those are also on my list. And then 2 more were Distance, which was on my TBR for this month, which is by Luna Mason, another author who's going to be at Rare 24 in Edinburgh later on in the year. And then Roman by Melanie Morland, that has been on my TBR for a while since I read the first one in the series, Aldo, and I wanted to get to Roman as well. So like I said, a very ambitious lineup. I'm definitely not going to be reading 6 books in 4 days, but I'm hoping to at least read 3 of them, and like I say, I'll be kicking off the readathon with Vlad. So I am going to be vlogging as I go, so I'll tune back in once I've read Vlad to let you know how I got on and what it was all about. Okay, so we're actually not off to a great start, unfortunately. Very sad to report that I did not enjoy Vlad at all. So the first book I picked up, like I said, was Vlad. It was co-written by Dukey and Webster. I had really high hopes for this one. It's a fairly shortish one, less than 300 pages. And it was really intriguing. I thought Vlad would be, you know, a really sort of cruel sort of hero, but I was hoping that it would be also one of those where he really kind of softens for the heroine, and you know, we see his softer belly, as it were. Now, unfortunately, I just didn't warm to Vlad at all, didn't really like him, and didn't understand why the heroine liked him either. And I felt some of the introductory parts were a little bit confusing, and maybe more will be revealed as we go through the other books, because essentially this one is book one of the V games, and there's 3 books in this series, and it seems to be set in Russia. These are all Russian mafia heroes and very, very sort of powerful Russian families, of which Vlad is part of the Vasilev family, and they're also sort of the Volkovs and Petrovs and other Russian surnames, all beginning with V, hence I think it's called the V Games. Now, as this book starts, Vlad is the eldest son. His father is still alive, so the father is still in charge. And there seems to be these V games that happen. Now, we're not 100% sure what happens in these games. Again, it's a little bit cryptic, but we can only surmise. But essentially, you enter the games. The men seem to go head to head in a bit of a fight to the death. The people who are left alive at the end are kind of the winners. But then we also find out that sort of women are involved in these games as well. And often they put in, you know, women to entice the men into sexual activity during the game. So I'm not really sure, I was left very confused about what these games actually were, how long they lasted, what the role of the women were in these games, and kind of what the overall objective is. But still, this story opens where the V games are about to happen, and Vlad's brother, who is just turned of age, I think he's about 18, he has been training to enter the games, and he's finally entered the games, and then things happen in the games and he kind of doesn't make it. So then the next scene is that we're at his funeral. Then what we have is basically the main female character. I think her name is Irina, and she is the younger sister of another lady called Diana, and basically they're at the funeral. What we realise is that Irina is sort of in love with Vlad. They knew each other as children, and she's always had a fascination with him and is really in love with him. But it's time for him to get married. He needs to have an arranged marriage, and he's arranged a marriage to Diana, her older sister. So Vlad is obviously more attracted to Irina. He would prefer that sister, but still he's got to do his duty and marry Diana. But he does Diana a bit of a deal, and Diana has to go and live with him in his family home. And Diana says, can I please bring Irina with me for protection? And also, please promise me that if we have to have an arranged marriage, you'll let Irina marry for love. And so Vlad agrees to this. Now, they also bring a bodyguard with them, and it then kind of transpires that Diana has been having this affair with this bodyguard. So she's not a virgin, and she's kind of sneaking out with this bodyguard behind Vlad's back. And of course, when he finds out about this, he's not going to be too happy. But still, there's loads of other sort of political games going on, lots of intrigue. We, find out more about Vlad's brother and what happened to him in the games. We also find out a bit more about his sister Vika, who is a twin to the brother who died. And she is a very, very sort of vicious, evil woman. She's a bit of a snake, only cares about herself. And she may have been responsible for her brother's death. And so Vlad, tries to marry her off to a different family in kind of retribution, because he thinks then she'll be punished. And so there's all this sort of intrigue going on. It's all set around these sort of V games, and the Russian families are vying for power. But this whole time, obviously, Vlad is trying to engineer the situation so he can get Irina for himself. And I just didn't like the whole setup. I didn't like the scenario. I didn't like Vlad at all. He is definitely cruel, ruthless, ambitious, and I just didn't get any warmth or softness from him. Not even really for the heroine. It was clear that he was obsessed with her. He wanted to be with her. But then also, she was supposed to be like this really innocent virgin, but she was obviously also brought up in a very ruthless household, so she was also kind of tough. And then she was kind of tasked with training the women to enter the V games, and she was kind of okay with it, and the whole thing just didn't gel for me, it didn't work for me. I just didn't buy her as a sweet naive character, and I didn't really ever warm to Vlad throughout the whole book. So by the time they kind of got their HEA, I really didn't care, to be honest, and wasn't that interested, and I was a little bit disappointed with how everything kind of went, because I really wanted to enjoy this. Now, the only thing I would say about this is it's actually quite an old book. I'm not exactly sure of the date, but it's written around 2016, that sort of time, so it's a good 8-10 years old, and maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it's an early kind of mafia sort of romance, and it would have worked better had I read it when it came out. But reading it now, I just think it felt a little bit dated. I wasn't into the characters, didn't buy the story, didn't feel their romance, and so yeah, unfortunately rated it 3 stars, which on reflection may be generous, but it wasn't terrible. It was well written. Now, it hasn't put me off reading anything more by Dukey, because one of the reasons I actually wanted to read this is because she is an attending author at Rare 24 in Edinburgh later in the year, which I'm attending, and so I might actually look to see some of her more recent romances and just see how I get on with one of those instead, and maybe her writing has moved on, and obviously the stories would be more up to date, so we'll see. But like I said, off to a fairly rocky start. However, once I finished Vlad, I did start my second book, Diamonds in the Rough by Emilia Finn, straight away. I'm about 10% into that book so far. It's book 2 in the Underbelly Enchanted series, and it's a spin-off to Emilia Finn's May It Justice series. And basically it's a mafia family, and in this one we are kind of following the enforcer in the mafia, Mika, one of the kind of several brothers who are part of this sort of mafia, and his romance with a lady called Tia. Now, all that's happened so far is, you know, Mika going with his brother to attend a mafia sort of based meeting, and then we are introduced to Tia because she is heading to one of the clubs that they own. Amika has been out for a run and bumps into her in the street before she gets to the club, and he's like, what is a person like you doing in a neighbourhood like this? And I'm not sure the club is the place for you. But nevertheless, Tia is meeting a friend at this club, and so she kind of goes in to meet the friend, and that's as far as I've got with this one. So I don't know what else is going on, what else is going to happen, but like I say, I'm about 10% in, so I am going to crack on now. Hope to get through this one tonight, so that I hopefully then will have a chance to go on to a third book, so that I can review that one for you as well. So check back in with you soon. Okay, so it's Sunday morning and there's just one day left to go now of the Mafia Romance Readathon, and I have finished my second book, and it was a much better reading experience than the first one for sure. So I've just finished Diamonds in the Rough by Emilia Finn, and this is book 2 of the Underbelly Enchanted series, and I really enjoyed book 1, which was about Felix, and he is kind of the leader of their mafia group, and this book is focused on his brother Mika, who's kind of the enforcer, his brother's bodyguard, second in command, and the female character that we're following in this one is Tia. Now, at the very start of this book, I think I explained, because at my last check-in, I just read 10%, so they'd literally just had a meet cute in the street where Mika was out jogging. Tia was on her way to one of his clubs called Cece's, and they kind of bump into each other, and Mika goes into the club with her, but basically said it's not really the sort of place for her. Anyway, after that, they kind of bump into each other a couple more times, and Mika starts to kind of like, not follow her as such, but kind of dig into her past to figure out who she is, because he's really suspicious that she is up to no good, or that, you know, there's something wrong. His spider senses are tingling basically, and he thinks that somehow she's a plant or a bit of a setup. But Mika is very paranoid. You know, his reason to be is to protect his brother and to protect his family, and so he doesn't really trust anyone, and so he is quite conflicted, because really what's happening is he really likes this girl, he's very attracted to her, and therefore he thinks that it must be too good to be true, and therefore something must be wrong, and so he's convinced that she is deliberately kind of stepped into his path to try and trap him in some way or trick him in some way. Of course, he's the one that's constantly bumping into her. He goes to her place of work, he like looks into her background, and is the one that kind of invites himself over to dinner. And she constantly says to him, I don't know why you don't trust me, because you're the one that keeps coming to me. I have no interest in coming to you. And of course he does his background checks and finds out that she's exactly who she says she is. And so it really is more about him being completely paranoid about what's going on. Obviously other mafia things happen, him and his brother go on meetings, and there is this kind of baddie in the background who is trying to kind of take over their territory. So he is starting to interfere quite a lot with their businesses. He is killing people on the street, and they are really trying to find out where this guy is, what he's up to, and obviously protect themselves. So kind of the plot kind of builds up to this place where they know they're very much in danger. Now, I don't really want to give too much away, because things go on like this up until about the 70% mark, and then after that there's a twist in the story. Some things are revealed, basically, that if I said them, they would definitely be spoilers for this story. But it's definitely something you could probably figure out. It wasn't like it was a major shock, but I wasn't 100% expecting what did happen. And from there, the story got much more thrilling, much more exciting, and I was very, very nervous about what would happen to this couple and how they would resolve their issues between them. So like I said, I thought it was a good story up to the 70% mark. I was enjoying the read, but it really, I think the twist at around the 70% mark, and then what happens after, really kind of propelled this book from something that was just good to something that I really did enjoy. Now, by the time I finished it, I didn't know whether to rate this 4 or 4.5 stars, but I decided to keep it at 4 stars for now. I might reflect on it and change my rating, but I think 4 stars, only on the sense that it did take 70% of the book to kind of really get going. There was a lot of groundwork that was being laid, and you know, all the exciting stuff happened at the last part of the book. And also, I don't think although there was a good ending, I don't think there was a really good romantic ending in that sense. So I think I'm going to stick at 4 stars, but definitely way better than the first book that I read, and I really enjoyed it, and would definitely recommend this one. So I'm really pleased. The other thing is, there was a couple of things in there that actually, if you then go back and see the points that I've accrued, might actually reveal parts of this plot. Because surprisingly, some things happened in this book which meant I could tick off a couple of the extra bonus points for Mafia Readathon, which meant I ended up accruing 11 points in total. So I have 5 bingo board points so far, and then 6 extra points so far, taking me to a grand total of 11 after reading 2 books. Now, the third book that I've picked to read is Jackie from First Lady Reads, her recommendation, which will give me 5 points just from reading it, and that is The Bratva's Baby by Jane Henry. And I'm hoping that will tick off a few more prompts, because it's a captive BDSM host recommendation, and so I'm hopeful that it will not only give me some more bingo card points, I'll get a bingo line, but I'll also tick off a couple of the other extra points as well. So I'm hoping that I'll end up with around 26 points by the end of the readathon, because I think I'm only going to have time to squeeze this last book in. The good news is that I'm about 20% into the final book. I'm absolutely loving it so far. As soon as I started reading book 1, I was like, yes, this is the type of mafia romance I like to read. It is Bratva, so Russian mafia, which is my favourite. The main hero in this one is definitely unhinged. He's very quickly went from very charming to extremely aggressive very quickly. It starts out where the hero in this one, Casimir, has been sent by his Pacan to go and seduce a woman, get her to marry him, and then take her inheritance and then dispose of her afterwards. The thing is, this woman that he's been sent after is very, very meek and timid. She's a librarian and she's actually very, very poor, or she thinks she's very poor. So we've already found out that she was part of the foster system and doesn't have any friends or family. And so I think what's going to happen is that she's going to end up being, you know, the offspring of somebody in the mafia, and now that that person is dead, she is potentially the heir to this fortune, but she doesn't know it. So they've swooped Casimir in to go and get her, marry her and take this money, I'm sure for nefarious purposes. The thing is, Casimir was planning to, you know, wine and dine her, seduce her, get her to fall in love with him, but he's run out of time because his Pacan has just basically recalled him back to Russia, and so he's had to resort to drugging her, kidnapping her and taking her captive. So it's absolutely the sort of mafia romance I love to read. Really excited so far. I've got high hopes that this is going to be a really good one. Yeah, looking forward to checking back in and letting you know how I get on. Okay, so I've just finished the third and final book that I plan to read for this particular readathon, and it started off really, really strong. It was a kind of mafia romance that I really like. It's a Russian mafia hero. He is sent to basically kidnap a woman so that he can marry her for her inheritance, and then the plan is that after he's married and got her money, he's going to dispose of her. And it started off really strong. There was a very strong BDSM element, so although it didn't 100% make sense that he would do it for the woman that he's kidnapped, there was a definite sense that he was some sort of dom who trains submissives, and there was a pattern there of him sort of taking women and training them to be submissive before relinquishing them, letting them go. Not sure if he sells them or just disposes of them or what happens. But it was clear that when he was tasked with taking our heroine, who was called Sadie, his plan was not only to take her and marry her, but also that he was going to train her to be a submissive. So it started off pretty strong in that category. However, I felt it lost a lot of traction, a lot of steam halfway through the book when he started to develop feelings for her, became very possessive and jealous of other men going near her, and particularly his boss, Dmitri, who we kind of are not too happy with. He's not a great guy at all, and although he's obviously brought up Casimir to kind of be his son and be as sort of diabolical as he is, Casimir clearly does have a heart and starts to look at Dmitri with fresh eyes because of the way he's starting to feel about Sadie and wants to keep her for himself. And then as we go on, basically Sadie then gets pregnant, which is no surprise. I don't feel that's a spoiler because obviously the title of the book is called The Bratva's Baby, and then his feelings towards her definitely do change. And then basically, like I say, all the steam and all of the wind has taken out the sails, as it were, of the BDSM elements of this, of him training her to be sort of his sexual slave, as it were. He kind of like turns into this person who wants to become a family man. So I'm not going to spoil in terms of how it ends, but overall I rated this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, but like I said, it kind of like started off really, really strong, and then I think it took a bit of a turn that I wasn't expecting, and it didn't really follow through with the original sort of promise in terms of what this kind of guy was going to be delivering, what we were expecting from him, and his character really, and just kind of like, you know, was totally swayed by this woman that came into his life, which, you know, we do really normally enjoy. We like it when a man suffers towards his woman, but I feel like I say, the track that we were on kind of veered off completely, and the author didn't really hold course to the original intention of this story. So that's all I would say about this one. I really did enjoy it. It was a great recommendation from First Lady Reads, so thank you, Jackie, for the recommendation. I did enjoy this one. I would definitely be interested in reading more from Jane Henry. It was the first time I'd read this author and I really did enjoy it. But like I say, yeah, ended up with this one being 4 stars. So I'm going to go now and strike off my bingo board, add up my points, and I'll come back to let you know where I stood in the rankings and how it ended up. So here we are at the end of the Mafia Romance Readathon for another year, and I've had an absolutely fantastic time. I've really enjoyed it. I thought the bingo board and the additional points that we could earn and earning ourselves a rank within the Mafia was a fantastic idea, so thank you very much to Jen from the Book Refuge for coming up with this idea and hosting the Readathon, as well as her fabulous co-hosts, Jess from Honest Fiction, Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl, and Jackie from First Lady Reads. So thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Now I've finished all 3 books. I put the scores on the doors. I've ticked off the bingo squares. I've added up my bonus points, and I've also found out where I sit in the Mafia rankings, and I'm absolutely delighted with the result. I really didn't think that I would rank so highly, having only read 3 books, and I wasn't that successful in crossing too many squares off the bingo board, but I think Jen was very generous with her point allocations, and it worked out really well. So the grand reveal is that I made it to 25 points, which is just scraping through to make sure that I was either a Don or a Donna. So yes, I am now in charge of my own Mafia faction. Could not be more excited. So how did we get to these points? Well, on the bingo board itself, I actually managed to tick off 7 squares in the end, and also create 1 bingo for an additional 5 points. So that was Follow the Host, New to Me Author, Captive, Next in a Series, Irish Mob, Bratva, and a Tattooed Hero. In addition to that, I also managed to earn some additional extra points because I had 2 points for BDSM, 3 points for Undercover Agent or Spy, and 5 points for reading Jackie's recommendation of The Bratva's Baby by Jane Henry. So altogether, I managed to accrue 25 points, and like I say, that assured that I hit the top ranking of Don or Donna for the Mafia organisation. So there we have it. That's basically my experience of this year's Mafia Romance Readathon. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye. I then selected 2 of the books that have been hosted. Then selected 2 of the books that have been hosted. It's not a good sign, is it, when it's not even that hot, but my camera is overheating, so I hope there's nothing wrong with it, because that would be a bit of a disaster. So the Mafia now I need to catch my breath because I've literally just gone up and down the stairs, and this is the state I'm in. Not good. Anyway,